Okay. Yeah, so the Roman Empire kind of dominates this part of the world, but like many empires do, it all fell apart after a while. And the Roman Empire kind of gets divided into two pieces. There's the Eastern Roman Empire, which is this side, and the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire stays kind of nice. The Western Roman Empire just goes completely into the toilet as far as culture and knowledge and learning is concerned. In fact, give me a thumbs up if you've heard of something called the Dark Ages. All right, some of you have. Yeah, I mean, Europe kind of goes into the Dark Ages where it just seems like, everybody's living a terrible life. There's a lot of disease, and you've heard the Black Death. Probably people only live short, ugly lives. If you live to age 40, you've probably lived a pretty long life. So there are a lot of things that are kind of rough here in Europe. In the meanwhile, there is a man who I know you've heard of. I know you've heard of. You've even played a game in the pool that's based on his name. I mean, if you played Marco Polo in the pool before, or a lake or whatever, sure. Marco Polo is represented by this line that's going across our map. I'll write that on there. Marco Polo leaves Europe. This would be in the 1200s. Goes to China, spends a lot of time there, actually kind of grows up there in a way. Eventually returns to Europe with spices and silk and all this news, this great stuff about how China is so much better off than Europe is. Europe's terrible. China's actually pretty nice. And that gets a lot of people interested in setting up trade routes to get back and forth from Europe to China. Get some of that really great stuff to Europe. You might have heard the name of this. This trade route eventually becomes known as the Silk Road. Oops, it looks more like Sick Road, but it's the Silk Road. This is something you've probably heard of, and it becomes pretty popular. Trouble is, it's really slow to travel by land across Europe and all of the way across Asia, and it gets to be kind of dangerous, where people know you're coming with wealth and supplies, and they'll rob you and whatever. So some of those European nations decide they want to find better ways to get to Asia. I'm going to use 4 different colors to show you what those nations do. So I have here, give them the light, green, an orange, a blue, and a red. We're going to use green to represent Portugal. So I'm going to kind of color Portugal over here as green. In the 1400s especially, Portugal has a leader whose name is Prince Henry the Navigator. He thinks there's got to be a way to sail from Portugal around to Asia. But people don't know how to do that in Europe. Remember, all knowledge and learning is lost. And so slowly but surely, Portugal, over a period of dozens and eventually hundreds of years, they start sailing little bits at a time around the tip of South Africa, what's now South Africa. And they finally, over a long period of time, of inventing better equipment and better boats and learning how to use science. Science. Yeah, they learn how to make it to India. So Portugal begins to become a little more wealthy than some of these European nations who are not. So Portugal winds up, doing a pretty good job of figuring out how to get to the east. Well, Portugal's big competition, their big nation that they compete with a lot, is Spain. Spain says, oh, wow, look at that. Portugal's getting really rich. It still takes, though, a long time to sail around South Africa. So Spain comes up with this idea. They actually hire a man to do this, whose idea is you could sail this direction around the world and wind up over here in China, where all the wealth is. Well, remember, all knowledge and learning has been lost in Europe. They don't know that there are continents out here. I bet you know the name of the man who is actually Italian, but he sails for Spain and comes over here and discovers, oh my goodness, actually he didn't discover it, somebody else did. But a guy by the name of Christopher Columbus winds up down here in some islands. Raise your hand if you heard of Christopher Columbus before. If you've never heard of him before, take that hand and hit yourself in the head. Okay, good. Christopher Columbus winds up down here. He thinks he's over here because nobody in Europe knows there are big continents here. Actually, Columbus goes to his dying day, never realizing he's discovered new continents that Europe didn't know about. Another map maker by the name of Amerigo Vespucci figures that out. And his name, Amerigo, is where we get the word America. Well, the Spanish, they do a lot of exploring over here. In fact, they're going to explore all up and down North and South America. In fact, you probably know a lot of these countries speak Spanish still as their main language. A lot of Spanish place names, even in the southwestern United States. So Portugal is doing doing the exploring. They kind of faded off the scene by the time the Spanish are a big deal. Spanish are getting wealthy. They're doing a nice job of exploring. French decide to get involved, so we're going to use blue. Blue is my France color. There we go. Here's blue. France decides, okay, look, all this area is already taken, so they're going to do a lot of their exploring kind of this direction, going up into what's now Canada. They go all the way down the Mississippi River. They do a good job of making friends with the tribes who live there. Unfortunately, the British, when they come later on, they're not going to make friends with the tribes at all. They're going to treat them very, very badly. But France gets involved in colonies, trying to spread not just faith like the Spanish and later the British, but trying to gain some wealth. Finally, about in the 1600s, the British realize, oh, gee, we're missing out. The Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, all way ahead of the game. So my fourth color is going to be England. We'll make them red. England's having a civil war. They have all kinds of problems. They're over there chopping each other's heads off. They finally realize, uh-oh, the rest of Europe is ahead of us. So the British are going to take what's left over as far as colonies here in North America. The British are going to wind up settling what is now the east coast of the United States. That's not the best area. The tribes who live there are not as well developed as like the Incas and the Aztecs and the Mayas that the Spanish had met. Not even as developed as some of the Plains Indian cultures that the French had met and become friends and business partners with. But the British decide, look, there are some reasons why we want to make some colonies here as well. Yeah, there's money to be made. Also, there are people who want to get out of Europe for religious reasons. Many of them want to get out of England into America. And so that's a lot of our deal right now, is that those 4 European nations, yeah, they want wealth. They want to find better ways to get to it. They're going to spend a lot of time and effort, and this all takes several hundred years. But eventually, those European nations stake claims here in the New World. Now, I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm going to go back over to my desk and show you what